Well, there's one thing I know. It's that orgs and owners really like hearing about new deals. So if that was something you were able to bring to them.
They do like hearing about new deals.
Well, it is St. Louis LCS Spring Finals right now with coverage brought to you by Alienware. I'm joined right now by Chopper from Riot Games to talk a little bit about how things are going on the LCS. For those that haven't seen Chopper before in my interviews or elsewhere, he runs the LCS, and so that's what we're going to be talking about. So first off, how do you feel after Spring 2019?
Really good. I feel like we've been able to build on a lot of the lessons from franchising in 2018. We've been able to build out relationships with the owners. We're developing new content, new ways of kind of broadcasting. We've got a lot of cool graphics and updates coming in for the summer. And so I feel like there's a lot of momentum right now. And we're excited to see not only that kind of build here with such a great event here in St. Louis, but build throughout the summer and into the fall.
I mean, this event in particular, I should say we're filming this after the second game going into the third, so we don't know if it's going to go to 4 or 5 games. But the audience has been really spectacular. It feels like a pretty good case for having these bigger events, unlike the Miami event from spring last year.
For sure. I think that's one of the lessons we learned last year was that as great a venue as it felt like the Fillmore was, the audience just wasn't big enough to kind of convey that big sports moment feel that a lot of our fans are going for. And there are so many great markets around the country that have, thousands of passionate fans that want to attend these events. And so, between being able to find a great venue like we found here at Chaffetz, which has been awesome to work with. The staff here has been great. The venue's been incredible. The fact that the fans feel like they're right on top of the action, like they're really close, so it's super loud in the venue. Obviously the fact that it's just full up with fans who are excited to be here. It's been a really great show. We're excited.
You mentioned that there's some improvements coming for summer, I guess, on the broadcast or elsewhere. Can you speak to any of that yet?
Yeah, we're sort of working through different look and feel upgrades, different kind of digital experiences, graphics packages, how we present highlights, how we think about, how should we be doing our tape delayed broadcast is, running it on Monday. Does it make more sense? Should we be cutting it up differently? So we're just really trying to go through and find ways to not only improve the quality of the broadcast, but improve the ways that people can consume the broadcast and consume the overall esport.
Now, as is the case, I think, before most spring and summer finals, you guys had an owners meeting yesterday. How did the owners meeting go?
Great. We had the owners out here. We got to talk through a whole bunch of issues really kind of core to the development of the league. And, I think when we looked at a lot of the owners conferences last year, they were very, I don't want to say rudimentary, but they were focused on a lot of very short-term issues. They were focused on things that we knew we needed to get right. Things like building momentum on the sponsorship side, some key hires that we needed to make. And now that we've kind of had that year to build out across those issues and work through those, now we're really able to work through issues about the future and issues about kind of where this league's going to grow into with the owners. So thinking through things like, geolocation, geo-affiliation, expansion, how we want to think through broadcast and kind of like what changes we would consider making there. Those are all decisions that we're able to look to now. And that kind of bigger strategic work is what really not only I think motivates us, but motivates the owners, because that's us building the league into something better, not just sort of like checking the box on things that we know we need to fix.
So I kind of want to open a bit of a Pandora's box here with, based off of a call not a call, but last night we did Hotline League. One of the people that came on the stage was a Clutch fan who is from Texas, wore a giant cowboy hat. You mentioned geolocation, and while Clutch is not officially geolocated, like they've built off of the kind of Houston Rockets stuff. I don't know if you can comment at all on the ESPN reports that have come out around like an ownership change that would potentially put Clutch majority ownership underneath the 76ers, but I'm kind of curious if there's anything you can mention around that.
Nothing that I can say in regards to any potential transaction, until we have a deal. Basically, the way that any deal like that is going to work is the interested parties will kind of start to negotiate business terms. Once they get pretty close to the end, then they'll bring in the league, because at the end of the day, the league has final approval rights, so we can make sure that any owners who are coming in are owners that we would approve of. And so once we go through that process where we'll speak to the new parties, we'll interview them a little bit, we'll understand kind of what their intentions are and their goals are. It almost feels similar to the original application process. We want to make sure that they're the right fit for our league, and it's not just, selling to the first person that's willing to come up with a number. And so once that happens, we'll go through that process. And then once, kind of all approvals have been checked and all contracts have been signed, that's when we'll go public with it. And, then we'll handle any sort of brand changes that need to be made. But overall, it's a pretty extended process. So, just the fact that people are seeing things in the media right now doesn't necessarily mean that things are going to be different for summer it's a long process before anything like that would happen.
You mentioned brand changes. I was kind of curious about that because one of the things that was supposed to be pretty hype around franchising is there wouldn't be as much of a revolving door around team franchises and brands and names and all that stuff through relegation, promotion, and frequent ownership changes. But everybody's like, the 76ers, Dig is back in the LCS, baby. So is there a chance that, I don't know what the structures internally are around that. I don't know if there's an ownership change, if they have to maintain the existing brand, or if they can just name change and switch it to something else. Like, I don't know if you can speak broadly to what those functions are.
That comes more down to what the new ownership group and the new partnerships kind of want to do. And so it depends on, in the case of a purchase, do brand assets travel? Do they not? Are they part of a new organization? What brand assets exist there? And so that's something that we work out on a case-by-case basis. We're never going to do a mid-split shift in brand. So like 1 week they're this, the next week they're that. We want to make sure that if there is a change in brand, there's time to, do it over the course of a longer time, really cement that, introduce the new brand, kind of introduce the story that they're trying to tell with that. But at the end of the day, we want to work with our partners to do what's right for them. We're not trying to hold people to a specific brand if they feel like there's a different opportunity. We don't want to kind of hold people, especially in the case where a business is moving to a brand that doesn't necessarily fit what their new vision is. So we are excited to continue working with Clutch for the future, and until that changes, that's kind of where we're at.
But it does sound as though an older LCS brand, like what it was, Good Game. What was the name of the team? Yeah, Good Game University. If Good Game University wanted to buy their way back into the LCS right now by acquiring TSM could become Good Game University for Summer Split theoretically.
That's certainly a strenuous application of a hypothetical, but it would be something that we could certainly discuss.
Well, I'm holding out for the return of Good Game University, acquiring what might be the spring finals winner in just a little bit. But good to know that that functionality is there, because actually I don't think much of that was discussed whenever the franchising process was initially brought about.
Our goal is that we do want to limit that kind of turnover, and we want, and part of franchising was we want to work with permanent partners and work with them to develop those brands. But we understand the reality is that businesses change. And, we're now, by the end of this year, we'll be 2 years into franchising. And that's a lot of time, especially for newer orgs that came together in the context of pursuing this kind of an opportunity. And so especially when some of them are looking to, raise funds to be able to pursue additional kind of strategic efforts synergistic to that org, they need to have a little bit of flexibility to make changes. So we want to make sure that they have that flexibility without really kind of violently shaking up the foundation of what we consider the league to be.
Is it concerning at all that, less than a year and a half into the new franchise system, there are rumors around ownership changes? Because that seems like pretty short term, right, for teams to be looking to sell their, or not teams, but companies to be looking to sell their shares or stakes in the teams.
So I think it changes depending on what you envision the case to be. And admittedly, I'll say I haven't seen a deal come across my desk yet, so I can't comment on anything specific. But I think it's a very different story if one team is just saying, we want out, we're selling, and we're like fully divesting and like we're disappearing, versus an org saying, we're taking on additional capital to be able to pursue additional opportunities, and we're merging or selling an interest to different organizations. We saw a lot of that when franchising originally went through. We saw organizations combine to be able to tackle this opportunity. And so for an organization to think that they might need to do that 2 years in isn't necessarily a radical notion to me. The economics today are different than what they were 2 years ago, and so teams are thinking about different challenges, they're thinking about different opportunities, they're thinking about different ways to invest. And so a team wanting to kind of partner with another org or sell a percentage of their ownership to raise investment capital, not surprising and not scary to me either. If we started seeing teams saying, I want fully out, then maybe a little bit more cause for concern. But as long as I see orgs who are still excited about staying in the business, staying invested in these organizations because they do see it as a successful opportunity, then I think we're in a lot safer situation.
Going back to the owners meeting yesterday, I think at the start of the split or right before, we had a conversation, and one of the things that I had discussed with you was the rumors I'd heard that certain organizations were frustrated to different degrees with the state of the league or their franchise situation or whatever. One of the rumors that I've heard recently was that 100 Thieves was not at the ownership conference yesterday or didn't have a presence, in part because of frustrations they feel towards the situation with the league. I don't know. I mean, again, it's a rumor that I've heard from a couple different places. I don't know if you can comment on it or if there's some sort of clarification or anything.
Yeah, it's just not true. They weren't physically present. They did have a scheduling conflict that prevented them from attending, which we were aware of ahead of time. But they were dialed into the conference. They were participating in the discussions. They were there throughout the entirety of the process. They actually came in and met with NA senior leadership, both esports and publishing combined, to talk about their vision for the future, how they think their situation in the league and kind of some of those opportunities could kind of be improved in the future. So we actually have a great working relationship with them, and they were definitely a part of that owners conference. They've been one of our most involved members in all of our organizational committees. So, the fact that they weren't able to attend, while it was unfortunate, was definitely not a sign of any sort of rift in working with them. If anything, they went above and beyond to find the ways to remain involved in that conference and not avoid any sort of opportunities to contribute to the discussion.
Speaking more broadly, then, where do you think the state of the owners and the league are right now in terms of relationship? Do you feel like it has improved at all since the meeting in December at the end of last year?
Yeah, I think we continue to build momentum. I'd say prior to this meeting, the December meeting was one of the better meetings that we had in terms of being able to show a little bit more transparency around sort of how some of the business of our league works, being able to show some momentum in terms of some of the biz dev opportunities that we're looking at. We brought on our new head of business development back late last year, and as he's had a little more time to get his feet under him, as we've been partnered with CAA for some time now, we've built a lot of momentum around sponsorships. And so while I don't have anything that I'm announcing today, I think that as we look through the coming weeks and months, we're going to have a pretty convincing story to tell. And we were able to highlight, preview a lot of that for the owners. And so while that does still kind of fall under the confidential bounds of the relationship that the owners have invested into, I think them seeing the transparency that we were willing to provide, seeing us talk about our vision for the future and across a variety of dimensions, I think was reassuring for them in the sense that it not only showed a lot of progress on issues that are important to them, but it showed that we're thinking about continuous development. We're not happy with where we are in viewership. We're not happy with where we are in economic progress. We think that there's still miles to go across a variety of fronts to get to the kind of place that we want to be as a business, as a league, and as a sport. And so I think that excitement, that hunger, that momentum was all made more visible in this meeting in a way much more tangible than it had been done previously. Even in committee updates and things like that, there's only sort of so much that you're able to get through. But having everyone in a room for 5+ hours, being able to run through a lot of the content that we've been preparing for weeks for this, and bringing in our entire staff of leadership, I think really made a difference for them, and I think they really appreciated it.
Well, there's one thing I know, it's that orgs and owners really like hearing about new deals. So if that was something you were able to bring to them.
They do like hearing about new deals. They do like hearing about new deals. I think it was one of the first times that we've actually received spontaneous applause at an owners conference happened this time. So we felt pretty good about it.
Congratulations. Looking forward to what all that can mean in the summer. The other thing I wanted to bring up with you is just one that's been weighing on my mind more recently. Obviously there was the Kotaku article that came out 9 months ago around the diversity issues at Riot. Since then, one thing that I've noticed is that while the LEC has had several hires and continues to put out content that really showcases the women talent on their broadcast, and even I think did like a Instagram takeover for International Women's Day, I haven't seen as much of that on the LCS side. Obviously, Ovly continues to kick ass, but haven't seen too much content that features women or diverse individuals. I'm curious if you have any thoughts or if that's something you guys are thinking about internally.
It's definitely something that we're thinking about internally. I wouldn't say that we're necessarily constrained to thinking about it in the context of talent, though. We're trying to think about the presence of diversity across the ecosystem. And so when we think about that, that includes everything from talent to our behind the scenes staff that works, where we have a ton of really successful and empowered female leaders, to players in the ecosystem as well, where we're trying to work with the Players Association as well as some prominent female streamers and league players who aren't necessarily might not have wanted to go pro and have made different decisions for their career for whatever reason, but we're trying to work with them to understand what are the steps that it would take to get the next generation of high-level female players to be interested in going pro. So, while there's certainly a lot of advantages to having diverse talent on the broadcast, and that's something that we're certainly committed to looking at as we go forward in the year. we're looking at it across a variety of dimensions. So just, it's not necessarily an issue of are we doing it here or not. It's sort of a question of we're trying to do it across a variety of fronts, and so we're trying to make progress, a bunch of different places at once. But it's definitely something that we feel is very important to the success of the industry. We want to make sure that this is a place where, individuals of all creeds, genders, religions feel comfortable, feel accepted, feel welcomed, and have an opportunity to succeed. And so we're committed to fostering that opportunity no matter where it exists. And so while one of those dimensions is talent, we're just as concerned about all the others.
I mean, it's very good to hear. I think one of the reasons why I have thought strongly about the broadcast side is that to date we don't know of any women that are rising the ranks and going to scouting grounds or anything like that. Hopefully that changes in the near future. I think the reason why the broadcast side of it has been particularly interesting for me to think about is that I think for a lot of women who watch the LCS, seeing visible examples of opportunities for them to be able to participate or role models. The amount of people that have come up to me and said, like, Shox is such a huge role model to me, or Ovly, women come up and say this to me, or whenever they meet them. I think that's one of the reasons why I have looked so often to see that change at all in the broadcast. So I know that you guys are looking holistically, but do you think there's a chance that in the near future we'll see more women representation across the content?
Yeah, I mean, depends what you mean by near term. I mean, I don't think we necessarily have someone that we're pulling out next week. We're continuously looking at the next generation of casters, the next generation of broadcast talent. That's actually been one of the more exciting parts about turning over the Academy broadcast to the LCS teams, was to see what talent might actually develop out of that ecosystem, who we could start to work with. So, we don't necessarily have the next caster coming up that I can necessarily speak to, but it is continuously something that we're evaluating whenever we're hiring for any position within esports. We're trying to ensure that any pool of candidates that we consider is well balanced from a gender and diversity standpoint, and as we continue to look to grow out the broadcast team, we'll do the same thing there. So I don't necessarily have a ready answer in terms of, oh yes, this woman will be starting with us next week, but it is something that we're definitely committed to and we're going to continue to work towards.
Okay, moving on. Spring Split is wrapping up. MSI happens, which I believe you personally don't have to really worry too much about, thankfully, given the way it's structured.
Just NA team's performance. Just watching, and I mean, at this point, I'm a fan like everybody else, so just cheering for our team.
Well, the nice thing is there's a pretty big break between now and then, so anything you can sort of mention about stuff that you guys are working on, or anything you guys want to look to do between now and summer?
Yeah, we have a lot of collegiate programming that's going to be running over the course of that time. It actually builds up to our collegiate championship, which will happen the week before LCS starts. So I think the last weekend in May. For more information, you can go to our Twitter at LOL Esports and check that out. So a lot of content that'll be coming in there. We'll be trying to do a little bit more storytelling and set up the summer split a little bit better. I really kind of dig into, how the team that goes to MSI performs, try and tell that story pretty effectively. And we've got a lot going on the business side, and so we've got a lot of new partnerships, new sponsorships, new experiences that we're looking to roll out for summer. So there's a lot that's going to be going on behind the scenes, and we're going to be just super excited to relaunch the league in June.
Forgive me, there was one thing I meant to talk about earlier in the split, or earlier in the interview. Yesterday on Hotline League, we had somebody come up who was a local to St. Louis. He was very, very enthusiastic about LCS coming to his town, but was a little disappointed that FanFest got canceled, and also that there wasn't any tailgate experience here, similar to what they had seen there, and so felt a little let down because he was like, I don't know the next time League is ever going to come back to St. Louis. This was our spot, and I kind of feel like there was an absence of stuff outside of the games themselves.
Well, given how great the venue and the crowd has been, this is going to be on our short list of places that, when we think about coming back to an area, this is definitely going to be on the list. The decision around tailgating was actually made prior to the decision about FanFest. And so we actually didn't feel very comfortable with the idea of doing a big tailgate and a big kind of exposed outdoor opportunity for a couple reasons. One, there's not as much outdoor space around Chaifetz as there is around an arena like Oracle, so we didn't have as much space to set up. And then just given the weather patterns and the opportunity for kind of like very quick forming volatile weather in the area, we didn't necessarily feel very comfortable with the idea of doing something outdoors. And so that's why we actually originally targeted the idea of a fan fest, which was going to be at this place called Ballpark Village. All the St. Louis residents will know exactly what I'm talking about. It's this great kind of multi-restaurant bar arena adjacent to the baseball stadium. And so we actually had plans to use that arena, or that space rather, and that was what we were calling FanFest. And when we initially started negotiating with the venue, they let us know, they're like, hey, this is a broadcast venue for when St. Louis teams are playing. So whether the Cardinals are playing or the Blues are playing or anything like that. We looked at the calendar. We knew the Cardinals were out of town, so that wasn't going to be a problem. And then they said, well, if the Blues make the playoffs, then, there's going to be a challenge because we broadcast them here. Fox Sports uses it as like a fan shot location. So they're like, you won't be able to stage an event if that happens. And we went on ESPN and we looked up the chances that the Blues had to make the playoffs at that point. It was something like 0.7%. Like they were really not doing great back in December. And so we were like, okay, cool. We feel pretty comfortable about that. Most places have outs for, extreme kind of circumstances. But we were like, all right, great. Apparently the Blues heard, I guess, and rattled off something like an NHL record series of wins. And as of about 5 weeks ago, when we had to cancel FanFest, they were a 99.4% chance of making the playoffs, which they ultimately did. And so the problem was at that point, it was really too late to find another opportunity, find another venue that could not only host at scale, but could do what we wanted in terms of being able to accommodate more than just ticket holders. Because that was one of the cool things about Ballpark Village was we were going to have it be just wide open. And so between trying to coordinate to a new venue with sponsors and bring in the teams and trying to do the whole 9 yards, it just ultimately it fell through. And as much as we would have been excited to do it and we were really looking forward to it, it's just the timing didn't work out on this one. And I'll see if I can find the chart and see if we can post it on Twitter somewhere of the Blues chances. And you can see the bottom part is when we were planning this, and then the top part is when we realized we'd have to cancel. So I go Blues. I think they won last night, so God bless. But it just wasn't meant to be on this one. Just kind of one of those unfortunate circumstances of event planning.
Well, thank you so much for the context on that. I really appreciate it, and thank you for taking time to sit down with me and talk about stuff. Really looking forward to Summer Split. Any quick message, as I really want to know what's happening in this game, that you want to say to any of the fans as we wrap up?
As always, just thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for staying committed and being fans of the league. It's you guys. You guys are the reason why we do this. You guys are what we're building this towards, and so your fandom means the world to us. We hope you're enjoying this finals. We hope you cheer our team on at MSI, and we're excited to see you back for the Summer Split in June.
Thank you so much, Chopper, for the interview. For everyone else, you can check out the rest of my coverage of all things esports right here on my YouTube channel.
Thanks, guys.
I want to thank you so much for watching my interview just now. I really appreciate you doing that. I had a great time here in St. Louis and have really enjoyed everything that's happened. And it's all because of Alienware. And if you're enjoying this coverage, it's also because of Alienware. They've been doing amazing things for me all year long. Now they've brought me here, and I couldn't be here without them. So thank you so much to Alienware for sponsoring my content. And I'm going to go see what happens with the rest of this match.